Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Response Able Solution. I'm Stanley J. Targos III, and I'm your host. Today, we're going to talk about interest rates, the effective versus the actual interest rate. What I think is interesting is whenever I bought something, I always look at what's the APR? What does the APR mean? How does it work? How does it apply to every situation that we're in, whether you're in a credit card, buying a car, getting a home? What does it mean? And what's the actual return that you're getting or you're paying? What's the effective rate? And the effective rate is different. The annual rate is what they're charging you. So for example, on my mortgage, I have a 6.76 mortgage, 30-year fixed mortgage. I make a payment every month, and to be responsible, I make an extra $100 payment, which the reality of that extra payment helps me get out of that 30-year mortgage from 30 years to 23 years. But at 6.76% interest, I was wondering, what's the effective rate of return interest rate over that whole period? And over a 30-year period, that effective rate of every dollar I put in is about 50%. What that means is when I make my payment, by the time it's all said and done and paid off, 6.76 is only the last few payments that I make. And it goes down after that a little bit. But over the lifetime, it starts out at 79.89% interest month one, and then goes down incrementally over 300 months or 360 months of payments, depending on what I make as an extra payment. It's just crazy to think of how can someone promote a 6.76% mortgage annual rate when the reality is it's between 35 and 50% by the time I'm done. Seems outrageous. It seems insane. It seems like the kind of thing that should be scrutinized and probably have regulations built around. Now, I'm not a big fan of big regulations and things of that nature. This isn't what this is about. It's about what's the actual interest rate you're paying by the time you're done paying off that loan. It's not 6.76. If it was 6.76, 94% of all the payment that I make would be going towards principal instead of interest. And it would be paid off that much quicker. But the truth is, I'm spending 2-3 times the amount of total payments making that payoff just for my mortgage at 6.76. So even when I go from 6.76 to 5 or 4, my interest rate doesn't, it drops tremendously on the annual basis. And certainly we think the sexy rates of a couple years ago of 3, 3.2, 3.5 are fantastic. But the truth is this, by the time you're all done paying off your loan, you're probably in the 35 to 50% effective interest rate. So how do you change that and control that? Well, certainly making an extra payment every once in a while or making bi-weekly payments so you make an extra full payment every year makes a difference. What I'm finding is I need to have a strategy that helps me organize my dollars so I can chunk away at that mortgage, at that debt in a way that makes sense for me and my family. Not for the banks and the lending institutions, and certainly not so that every 3 years I can refinance to a lower interest rate. Certainly, I want to refinance to a lower interest rate if I got a 1 to 2 year ROI on the payments that are saved versus the down payment and the cost of getting that loan done. That makes sense. But I'm not going to play that game forever. And just because I refinance doesn't mean I reset a new 30-year window where I'm making the payment. It means I'm going to reduce the total amount of time that I'm in that loan so I can take my effective rate from 50 or 30% down to 12 or 15%, which makes a lot of sense for me. Even when I buy a car, and I bought 2 cars in the last 6 months, one at 8.14%, one at 8.24%. The cost of cars is expensive. And certainly I'd love to get a 6% or 5% or 4% loan. But based on how we're working our economy and what we're building and how we're buying things and what we've purchased in a short window of time, we qualified for 8.14 and 8.24. Well, one of them we had 40 payments on, and that 8.14% interest rate has an effective rate of 12.45 over that 40-month period. Month one is 23%. So how does 8.14 equal 12.45? That's not just a 4% increase, that's a 50% increase in the interest rate effective rate over a 40-month window. The other one we've got over 65 months at 8.24, and that's 35.8% month one and 19.51% over that 65 months. How much of my payment is actually going to interest and how much of my payment is going towards principal? The annual rate they give us is not the effective rate for the total life of the loan. There's a big difference in how that works. There's a big difference in what it means for me and my family. And there's a big difference for what it means for you and how we're able to use this information so that we can keep as many dollars as possible in our economy. It's all the more reason why we need to be very effective and efficient when we pay off the loans. And it's not just paying a little bit on each loan. And it's not just a snowball where we take the lowest balance and pay it off, or an avalanche where we take the highest interest rate and pay it off. It's a combined strategy based on our cash flow, what's important for us, what our emotional needs are, and what our short-term goals are. And at the Response Able solution, our goal is to give you the ability to respond to what life brings you so we can effectively reduce those effective interest rates from 18, 20, 30, 35, 50% down to a net 10 to 12 or 15%. How much money will we be able to keep in our own pockets when we work that way? So let's take what the banks are giving us, but let's not play by the rules. Let's play by the rules that work for us. That means having a strategy, having a solution, and having an outcome that works for me and my family first and foremost. And I do need to borrow money because I don't have the ability to pay cash for everything, but it doesn't mean I have to give all my money away over the life of the loan. So I hope this helps. I hope this creates better questions. I hope you reach out in the comments below and say, hey, Stan, what's my effective interest rate? I've got a 3.5 or 3.25% mortgage rate. I will run the numbers and I will tell you. It'll be fun. It'll be enjoyable. It'll be eye-opening. I hope you have a great day. I hope God blesses your journey and enjoy the day.